mic shaking, I can hear the crew call. Tear down the fourth wall. I wanna see who's pulling the strings. Hey, show me the crack paint. Show me the rotten the wings. I'm done with the laugh track. Feeding me scripted applause. Tear down the fourth wall.
First off, I want to start off chasing Atlanta's reunion after the reunion by saying that I appreciate all of the mothers being recognized equally for Mother's Day. Um, this is the treatment of women that I get down with. I think that was a great way to start off this process and start off this show by giving each of these women their flowers as mothers. I think that was beautiful. With that, I'll say I'm hoping that my commentary breaks down at least some of the accountability that I feel should be taken on both sides when it comes to Alfeeya and the basically rest of the cast in this situation, because I think that's really what it is. There's accountability that needs to be taken on both sides by her and by the rest of the cast specifically. And I feel like, at least from a viewer's perspective, because in my opinion, the convolution of a cis person being the minority in queer spaces while on reality television, to me, acknowledges the greater divide in the Black and the Black queer specifically communities and some of the reasons why. So when it came to this reunion, my questions start at why, well, not why, where specifically did the misgendering of Nova come from Alfeeya's perspective when it comes to the timeline of their falling out, right? Specifically, when it comes to Nova speaking on Alfeeya's child that kept getting mentioned in the reunion after the reunion, because I thought that all of this stemmed from Nova bringing the gay for pay baby daddy to the group and to the cameras. But I thought, oh, hold on. Let's see. Let's see. We have a comment. I'm literally driving now, but when I park, me and my squad are pulling up heavy on your next stream and my Discord. Okay, well, y'all be safe driving out there. Um, I thought that this was about the baby daddy, and I thought that this was about the gay for pay baby daddy and them talking about all of the things going on with what they got going on and what he was doing on the low behind the scenes. And it turns out what Alfeeya brought up on the reunion was Nova speaking on her child, and that changed a few things for me. But I got to get to that a little bit later, because in chronological order of the reunion, what I didn't understand was why Alfeeya didn't flip the script back on Nova when it comes to this whole gay for pay boyfriend situation. Because if you listen to the recording and you listen to the actual audio where Alfeeya speaks on her baby daddy being gay for pay, Nova definitely responds and says that her boyfriend is gay for pay too. Did anybody catch that? So my whole thing is, I didn't understand why, instead of making yourself the victim in the situation, why didn't you go read for read with her? Because you definitely should have been like, babe, are you like, ma'am, are you calling? So you're saying that I need to take a bath because my baby daddy is gay, but yet, do you need to take a bath too? Because you definitely said your boyfriend is gay for pay too, the one that don't show up for you. So can we have a conversation about that? Do we need to be in the same tub? Do I need to save you some hot water while I'm taking this shower? Or what? Because I need to know how long or how hot your water need to be, because is your man selling pics to trans women or is he selling pics to other men? Like, how gay for pay are we going? Like, since we're going to get to the misgendering portion of this, I'm sure that's something that she would have said. Yes, I catch where all of that just went. For me, this is just very when in Rome commentary, and I don't understand why this wasn't like a fly. Like, y'all just couldn't go back and forth. This should have been a tennis match for me. This should have been some Puerto Rico type shit. This should have been some Angela and Pinky type shit. Even though not really, because Angela told Pinky ass to fuck up and she ain't get one read in for me. No shade, no shade. Pinky ain't get one fucking read in for y'all to say this is Puerto Rico coded, because it's not. But I digress. I think that she should have been prepared. Alfeeya specifically. I feel like Alfeeya should have been prepared for this situation. I feel like she should have been prepared for this show. If not on her own volition and her going and doing the research necessary for the job that she was getting ready to walk into, as I always say, be prepared for the job you show up for. Her friend Ondario should have prepared her for this show and what she was getting ready to walk into, because he's produced this show for God knows how many episodes, how many seasons, how many years. So if she's going to put her coming on this show being through him and her being his friend, then I feel like there should have been a conversation made between those two. If not him telling her, hey, go back and watch the show so you know what you're walking into, or at least send her to last season and was like, hey, these are a couple of the people from last season, get to know them so you can, kind of maneuver your way into the show, get a feel of what you're getting ready to walk into, or at least just prepare her for how the reads work in queer spaces. I feel like she should have been prepared, right? In my interview with Dominique, he did speak to trying to help her in the situation and trying to advise her throughout the way of the show, but she wasn't receptive to it, right? So that then becomes on her. That then becomes her fault. If she goes into a situation blind when the opportunity to be given some sort of preparation was given to her and she denied it, then it becomes your fault when you get your head blown off because you got a blind spot that was unnecessary. Do you get what I'm saying? Especially if you're willing to participate in the fuckery up until a certain point, and then all of a sudden you want to establish a line that you openly participated in giving the ammo to get your head blown off with. I'm just saying. Another thing that I'll say is that, in my opinion, the way that Alfeeya was presented on this show, it gave that it gave that she came into queer spaces and she moved with the audacity that white people feel free to move with throughout the general world. The way that she was presented on this show, and I'm saying that very specifically for a reason, because I'm not going to speak to somebody's character, because I've reached out to Alfeeya for an interview, but she doesn't accept new message requests from people that she doesn't follow, or she has very specific restrictions on her DMs, so my message never made it to her. So I'm trying to be very specific in the way that I'm speaking on this, but the way that it read on the show, it read she really kind of just moved with an entitlement and an audacity that I didn't like. It really gave a heterosexual privilege. It really did. It really felt like, to me, it read as a blatant lack of awareness of the space that she was in, and she didn't make any attempts to acclimate herself in the way that this specific world works, right? Because if we're going to be real, if we're going to have an honest conversation, we really need to talk about the way that straight people, white people are allowed to move throughout the world with a certain level of entitlement and audacity, because the way that they live their lives or the way that they are presented in the world is articulated as something that should be considered as the norm or the status quo. So I think that there's a lack of perception of the other side of the coin when you dub certain spaces, you got to recognize that when you alienate people from certain spaces, that they have to go and create spaces of their own. So now when those spaces are infiltrated by the people who are participants in the spaces that they were exiled from, it kind of gets sticky when you want to come into a situation, participate in the fuckery, and then make yourself the victim. Right? It initially makes me think that she wanted to be handled a certain way. I like to say with kid gloves that she wanted to be treated in a certain type of way in a space that wasn't hers, right? And I'm going to expound on that. It reminds me of Americans going to other countries and expecting them to just speak English to them simply because that's the language they know, right? It also brings up the trans women and cis women spaces conversation that continues to be brought up not only politically but socially, and a lot of the discourse that surrounds where trans women are welcomed or even allowed in the general public, and no space being made for them or the general queer community in the greater population. So, based on the way that this show was rolled out, it feels like Alfeeya wanted the red carpet rolled out for her just by sheer proxy of you being a woman in the space. And because you know men in your space to move a certain way, you expected men to move in this space a certain way. That's almost a verbatim quote from her, right? It felt like, to me, she expected the queer world to bend around her to a certain extent, and that's not fair. Because to the point of, this is a predominantly queer space. And to the point that Ondario made to Alfeeya's face, if you look at the application form, it does state that Chasing Reality and Chasing Atlanta is a queer space. Right? So that may have been her expectation considering how she came to the show. Exactly. And I feel like that contributes to the lack of preparation that was obvious that she came onto the show with. Coming into a space with that amount of entitlement around a bunch of punks and trans women, thinking that you were going to get the red carpet rolled out for you just because you're a woman. That's not how gay men work. Not all of them. I'm not going to generalize. I'm not going to blanket statement, but you compile that with gay men on reality television and the level of presentation that they feel that they need to come onto set with. And you as a cast member, you're now not just a regular cis woman. You're not just a regular cis woman, excuse me. You are now someone who is in competition with them for camera time. So while they may respect you as a woman, you are now someone who they have to compete with for their spotlight that is in a space that they are under the impression is built for them. So now the entitlement that you walk onto this show with as a cis woman in the general public of the world, especially as a Black woman, you are now getting met with that same entitlement from gay men who are in a space that are being told is built for them. You're being met with that same energy from trans women who are in a space that is built for them. So, you remember when I had that conversation about when in Rome commentary just a little while ago? You know, that's a very popular saying in the greater public. When in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? Well, Alfeeya, this was Rome. And you tried to do what the Romans do. But then when it got pushed a little too far for you, now all of a sudden you want to lean back on female tears, cis woman tears, the way that white women lean back on white woman tears. And that's not okay. That's not okay. You can't walk into the room, put your left foot in, and then when your toe gets stepped on, try to pull out and then say, y'all pushed me into doing the hokey pokey. That's not how that works. Right? That's just not how that works for me. Right? In regards to the email, I would love to know what protection that Alfeeya expected from production specifically. I would love to know what she expected production to step in and do for her in the terms of protection. Because if you're expecting protection from violence on the show, or protection from somebody jumping on you, or from somebody swinging on you, I don't know what you were expecting, because no one has ever been protected from violence on this show. Not a man, not a trans woman, not a trans woman from a man. This goes back to that preparation that I feel like Alfeeya should have been given or done. As an individual and a free thinker, I think she should have done it on her own and taken the responsibility upon herself to watch the show that she was getting ready to walk on, especially a show that was in its 7th goddamn season. There was more than enough material for you to skim through on 2x speed for you to get an idea of what you were getting ready to walk into. So for me, somebody walking onto an established reality show blind and then trying to say that that's an excuse of why they didn't know how to maneuver in the space, for me, it's always going to be bullshit. Always going to be bullshit, right? What I can say though, when it comes to this email, is that I can appreciate the reveal that she gave at the reunion about Justin speaking to the way that she was allegedly going to be portrayed by production on the show as the bitter ghetto baby mama, right? Because that does inform the way that she sees the situation and how she walks into certain scenes and how she views certain people. And when certain things happen, she's walking into it with that as her perception in the back of her mind, right? That is understandable to me. That is understandable to me. It doesn't make anything in the way that she moved excusable, right? I do believe that she should have handled production differently when it comes to this email, because I don't understand what you expect. You went into a situation accusatory when it comes to the rest of production solely based on the word of a production member that's no longer associated with the project. And I think that that is an unfair bias that you walked into the situation with when you sent that email. I think that that's unfair, because now you're conflating every issue that you've had on the show to this one sentiment from Justin Diego, and now saying that Ondario and the rest of production is now trying to set you up. And that there should have been some sort of conversation with the head of the network, especially because you decided to have a conversation with JT, which makes me wonder what came of that conversation with JT that you still walked into the situation with that mindset. Because she did say that a conversation was had with JT when Ondario did confront her about why she didn't come to him and why he didn't get a phone call. I do feel like that's fair enough to feel entitled to as the person who is the executive producer of the show, right? Technically speaking. In saying that though, once again, that kind of gives me like a chicken or the egg question of like, did she apply for this show, or did Ondario ask her to be on this show? Because that kind of delegates where the responsibility lies for me on how she should have been prepared for this show. If she applied and asked to be on this show and she went through the regular process like everybody else, she should have done her due diligence and figured out what she was trying to get on. If Ondario came and asked her to be on this show, he should have done his due diligence and given her the rundown of what she was getting ready to walk herself into. Mind you, she should have still done her due diligence regardless. But I do feel like based on how she was brought into the situation, there is more accountability that is placed on certain parties, right? Alfeeya does raise a good point, though, of how loosely the word friend is used in reality television. When people get held to that title, they retract that claim, right? Because we saw how Alfeeya was holding them to the mat about the way that they handled her as a friend, right? But then the moment that they are held to the carpet about how they treated her as a friend, Dominique is the person that speaks up and says, well, we weren't really friends like that. Well, we weren't really friends like that. And Alfeeya, to me, gave the perfect rebuttal of, well, you're walking around me using that term. At the time, you're addressing me as friend. You're addressing me as this is my friend. So I'm going to have the expectations of you of a friend and what a friend is supposed to be doing in situations like this, or what I would expect of a friend in this situation. So you can't call me a friend, and then when I give you the expectations of what a friend does, you now say, oh, well, we ain't friends. It's the same thing. It's the same thing of people fucking and not putting no real titles on it, but y'all sitting here doing all the shit that people do when they dating each other. Y'all fuck basis, y'all hanging out, y'all chilling with each other, y'all doing all this goofy shit, y'all calling each other bae and all that da. And then when that person decides to go fuck somebody else and then you get mad about it, they say, oh, well, we weren't together though. It's similar, right? And I don't like that. I just don't like that. So I do feel like that was a good point on her end. However, Alfeeya can't excuse the way her email made other people feel just because of how she felt in the moment, right? Like, you can't dismiss the way that other people are going to feel in the moment or after the fact, because she said in the reunion that she didn't hurt them other people. She hurt production, but she didn't hurt them. Meaning, what she really meant to say was she intended to hurt production. She didn't intend to hurt them, right? Because you can't sit here and say you didn't hurt somebody in the moment, especially because you want your feelings considered regardless of how the other person that you were into it with felt in that moment. That is a problem. That is a problem. Like, for me, what I realize is that what I recognize is that a generalization that Alfeeya casts over the entire group because of her opposition with some of the people in the room, it's very much, these couple of people made me feel this way, so all of y'all must feel this way, so all of y'all treat me this way. Everybody in the room treat me like this, even though you only have a problem with these couple people. In the dynamics of this situation, that's extremely problematic. Considering the dynamics of this situation, that's extremely problematic. With her as a cis woman coming into a queer space and now pulling this y'all blanket conversation, it's just not okay, right? Because it becomes a situation of some become all, and that's also not fair because she's handling everybody according to how she feels about some people. And then when she gets the smoke back from the people who she really don't have a problem with, she's responding with, well, I don't even have a problem with y'all, but you're addressing everybody in the room, right? If you watch Bad Boys Dominican Republic, Jada based all of his fades on this. Don't address everybody. Don't say you gonna slap don't say anybody can get slapped in the room. And then when any and everybody, don't say you gonna smack everybody in here. And then when everybody step up and punch you in the face, now all of a sudden you acting like you ain't got no problem because you didn't want to direct your smoke to the person you really had to fade with. That's pussy. Direct your issue to who you have the problem with, and then you won't be getting stray smoke from everybody else in the room. And now you're getting derailed from the person you really got a problem with because you want to see her and be Billy Badass, but not Billy Badass because you're being deflective by coming in here and saying that you're going to smack everybody in the room, knowing you really only got smoke with one person, but now 5 people done jumped on you. That's how you ended up fighting with Toni. That's how you ended up fighting with Toni Bryce. No shade. It's because you cast these blanket statements over the entire group and production as a whole because you feel like the minority, right? Now, on the other side of that coin, I will say this. One thing I will say as a parent, okay? And in the spirit of equality and all's fair, if there is a situation where my child is spoken on in the midst of discourse between me and another person, all bets are off. All bets are off. And I don't give a fuck who it is. Right? And we can't pinpoint the offense we relate to in this case specifically, misgendering, and not speak on this girl's child being brought up. Because that to me is where I find big issue with Toni Bryce, excuse me. Especially with Toni and Alfeeya just equally being recognized as mothers at the beginning of the reunion, as I feel it should be. So Toni Bryce, if you want to be equally recognized as a mother in the scene for your gay kids, then you cannot dismiss this woman's biological child being spoken on unnecessarily in an argument, and she decides to respond with misgendering this bitch. We all mothers, right? Mothers is mothers, right? Women is women, right? Y'all means all, right? Because in this situation, I agree with Alfeeya. Say whatever you want to say about me. Even say what you want about my baby daddy. But bringing up my child is a different story. Now, me personally, I would have left it at say what you want about me. Because I'm the type of person, the father of my child is just as off limits as my child. That's me, me, personally, right? But to her point, she said, say what you want about me. Say what you want about my baby daddy, but don't bring up my child. I'm with you. That's why I asked earlier, what was the timeline of Alfeeya misgendering Nova and Nova bringing up Alfeeya's child? Because if Alfeeya misgendered Nova out of nowhere, then I understand what's going on and why everybody is jumping on her, right? Not actually jumping on her, right? But y'all get what I'm saying. Y'all know what Paris means, right? But if you bring up this lady child, all bets are off. To me. Because Alfeeya misgendering Nova has nothing to do with anything, the same way that Alfeeya's child has nothing to do with anything. So if Toni Bryce is going to sit here and dismiss someone's blood child being brought up in an argument unnecessarily, then I feel like nobody should be upset when Alfeeya brings up Nova's extra chromosome unnecessarily. Especially because wasn't Toni the one in part 1 of the Chasing Atlanta season 7 reunion that said she was advocating for the girls to do whatever? Let the girls fight. Let them no, let them fight. In the words of Babs. Wasn't she the one that said she wanted to go ahead and let the girls twirl? But now all of a sudden you draw a line somewhere? I don't like that. I don't like all's fair until I get offended. That for me is not okay. Because y'all want to sit here and draw lines about what's too far, but then want carte blanche to fire off at anybody that walk in a room at you. I don't like that. It's not fair. Excuse me. Because to me, this is where gay children and children you actually raise split for me. This is where that notion of all mothers are equal split for me. Because I am someone who has both. I have biological children. Well, I have children that I have raised, and I have gay children that I have mentored, right? And for me, it's a difference. I love my gay children. Do not get me wrong. In every general sense, I will step behind them the same way that I would my actual children. However, all my gay children are grown and they can defend themselves. My daughter is somebody you will never bring up around me, and it fly. So I lost complete respect for Toni Bryce in that situation, for her to say that your child ain't got nothing to do with this, or it don't matter, or somebody bringing up your child doesn't matter. Her saying that, I lost all respect for you, because you want this person to be respected, chromosome or not, but you don't want to sit here and respect this child that she gave birth to when this child was disrespected first. Allegedly, because Alfeeya is saying that's the reason why she even said what she said about Nova in the first place, was because her child was brought up. So if y'all want to play the equal game, let's really play the equal game. Right? Because I don't understand how people, for me, this is just me, we can't draw the line at cis women in queer spaces as where we all of a sudden start watching what we say and start being sensitive about how we approach and start thinking twice about how we approach people, if we're going to allow a free-for-all for everybody else. If we're going to kiki at 2 trans women getting into it, if we're gonna kiki at 2 punks getting into it, if we're gonna kiki at a man and a trans woman getting into it, if we're gonna kiki at violence between men and trans women, then to me, if a cis woman steps into this space, she needs to be prepared for what the Romans do in this space. Right? But say all of that to say, that is why the order of importance matters to me. That is why the order of things is important and what was said first. Because if Alfeeya's account of things is correct, then everybody in that room is dead ass wrong. Everybody in that room is dead ass wrong for the way that they're approaching her on that situation. Because if you bring up her child, that's just like somebody bringing up your mama. How many of these punks in this room, T.S. Madison said it herself, I'll whip your ass on national television about my mama. There are too many punks in that room that would jump across a table and punch you dead in your face, man, woman, trans, non-binary, agender, and all, about they fucking mama. I don't feel like that about my mama personally, but you talk about my grandmother, you talk about Dorothy May, I'll whip your ass on live. Fuck national television. I will whip your ass on live. I will beat your ass on the internet. I will beat your ass in front of your mama about mama. Let's be clear. So imagine what I'm gonna do to you about my child. Imagine what I'm gonna do to you about my child. Who else got something to say to me? I don't understand that. Like, I don't understand how so many people, and I'm not just gonna put this on one community because both sides did this, and this is why I said that accountability needs to be taken on both sides. This is why I said this. Because everybody wants their feelings accounted for, but don't want to place themselves in other people's shoes and not think about how their actions would affect somebody else or how that coin can be flipped so easily. But you want everybody to take your feelings into considerations before they take their actions. But you have to be willing to do the same if you're going to put that expectation on other people. If you want other people to treat you the way that you want to be treated, you got to be willing to do the same. If you are willing to draw a line, then you have to be willing to keep your ass behind it. Y'all stop me when I'm wrong. Y'all stop me when I'm wrong. Because it doesn't make it right, but it does take all bets off the table. Because if Alfeeya misgendered Nova out of nowhere, that's one thing. But if she actually brought that lady child up, this changes everything for me. And do I feel and do I agree that Alfeeya has been transphobic in her defense against Nova? Yes, I agree with that 100%. Alfeeya has been transphobic on this show. Yes. There is no arguments here. Not one. Her misgendering that lady, calling her a it, calling her a he, going and writing a whole caption on social media and then going back and editing that caption and then changing the pronouns from she to it. That is disrespectful as fuck, and it is transphobic. Right? But speaking about her child is equally or more wrong. Point blank, period. And ain't nobody gonna change how I feel about that. Ain't nobody gonna change how I feel about that. There is no possibilities. Simple. I don't understand why that's so hard for everybody to understand, especially because I'm the one that said it before. And I will say it again. You can't push somebody and then tell them how mad to get when they respond. You can't fuck with somebody and then tell them how to read you back. That's crazy. That's crazy to me. You can't open up Pandora's box and then tell what's in there how to act when it come out. Where they do that at? Who said that? Like, how does that work? In actual reality, how does that work? I'm just saying. Um, All in all, when it comes to this situation, if a cast is going to be integrated when it comes to the dynamics of cis people and queer people and trans people and hetero people and all of that, I feel like it needs to be organic. Y'all just dropping straight people on a queer show is just not ever going to work in the way that y'all dropping gay people on a predominantly straight led show never works unless they are organically tied into the group to where the dynamics don't matter because there's actually legitimate friendships, then it's never going to make sense, right? um Nova does make me understand why everyone is mad at her after the fact, though, because circling back around, you can't make up with somebody and then double down on what you said in the moment of upset. Like Alfeeya, like you say, "Oh, we all grown, so let's kiki about it." But then if you're sitting here and willing to repeat the same things that you apologized for and that you made up for and that y'all resolved, then to me, that discounts the resolve. That wipes out any of the resolve that y'all actually did behind the scenes, because I'm glad that we did see that little clip of y'all having that conversation after the reunion that y'all didn't get to finish. Right? Um it can work if the producers actually produce their cast. Well, I'm speaking, well, yes, yes, yes. I do agree with that. However, this is what we continue to get because this is what they continue to work with. Ain't no artist development. Ain't no story producer. Ain't no character producer. I just, I don't know. I don't know. I just feel like, to me, saying that was how I felt in the moment versus saying I still feel that way are two different things, especially after seeing that conversation. And Nova not repeating anything she said during that beef really is a poignant note to make. And I'm glad that she said that, because she said, listen, we resolved it, we made up. I ain't said nothing else I said about you in this whole conversation. I ain't went back to it. I ain't talked about it. I ain't said nothing about it. Right? But you going and jumping in the comments, you going on the lives, rallying with the fans, saying, "Oh yeah, you read her saying yeah, da 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 da." That's kikiing about it, right? Because y'all are over it. You're saying that you're not kikiing about it, but you going in and basically doubling down on how you felt in the moment, even though y'all have resolved it, is the same thing as kikiing about it, and it's the same thing as doubling down on it, right? Because now it looks like Alfeeya is carrying the mess instead of moving on, even though y'all sat and had this whole conversation about resolving it. So you doing all of that is kikiing about it. That's exactly what that is, verbatim. Um, a great point was made about how interacting with the fans in the comments can change the way that people move throughout this cast. I just I don't understand why Alfeeya was so quick to go and jump in the comments, but she wasn't so quick to go and watch the damn show she was getting ready to come on. I don't understand why that is your priority, going and seeing what everybody has to say about you versus going and seeing the people that you were getting ready to go and film with for months on end. To me, that shows a level of your priorities being fucked up. Just saying. I think that you really could have spent your time doing something else, Mind you, this is retrospect and you did it after, but I feel like if you thought enough to go and jump in these comments and go and jump on these lives and go and talk about the show with the people after the fact, why do you want to sit and kiki with the fans, but you don't want to go and sit and get to know the people who you were getting ready to come on the show with, especially when you, from what I saw on the show and from what was told to me in my interview with Dominique, you damn sure didn't make any effort to really get to know them when you came on the show. But you got mad when Dominique didn't take your son to Chuck E. Cheese. Okay. Anyway, let's move on.
Tear down the fourth wall. I wanna see who's pulling the strings. Hey, show me the crack paint. Show me the rotten the wings. I'm done with the laugh track. Feeding me scripted applause.